Hey, so welcome back. This is part 2 of our mini series of building the simple manufacturing operating system, and today's focus is going to be Noloco. I'm gonna take you through the setup of my views and the permissions and that sort of thing. Everything that you need to know about the Noloco setup is going to be covered in this video. Next video is going to be all about automations. There's only one automation that runs behind the scenes, so it's going to be a fairly short one. But yeah, for now, let's just jump in and take a look at how Noloco is set up. Now, if you've not used Noloco before, go ahead and check out the description down below. There is a link where you can basically sign up for Noloco. It's a fantastic little tool. If you want to learn more about how to set up Noloco with Airtable, there's also another link down in the description where check that out if you're a complete newbie. But for those of you that are just curious to see how I've built this, it's actually quite straightforward. So we really, at least in my mind, we have two main parts to this. We have the orders view, which is essentially this. I mean, technically you have the list, but I'm not really going to touch on that because I anticipate that our orders are actually coming in from another system, like, I don't know, Shopify or WooCommerce or something like that. So we don't really need to pay much attention to, how do we add an order and what does the form look like? We have an order, we have line items, which is in a separate tab, as you can see. And I think the biggest question here is how do we set up the permissions to work with my team, because we have people in packaging, we have teams in shipping and all of that stuff. First thing that I've actually developed for this was this particular screen, which is our order screen. And let's go into build mode and I'll show you how I've done things. So first thing is, of course, the tabs. Very straightforward. We have production and we have order line items. Order line items simply contains a simple list of line items in a and of course I'm filtering this, I believe. Where is it? Ooh, actually I'm not. I should be. There you go. That should be filtered. That's basically that, just the line items from the order. If you haven't seen the previous video where we go through the setup of Airtable, go ahead and do that. I've linked it in the description. Watch that if you want to see how the database is constructed. But essentially, we have orders and we have order line items. Now, the next thing that we need to take a look at, production tab, because order line items just stores order line items. I know that the users of this app would not really care about the order line items per se. They would care about the production line items. We have two highlight sections over here. First highlight section and contains this production automation field. Essentially, when you press the button to start production, in other words, the automation to break down the order line items into production line items, two different things, we want to let that person know that, hey, something's happening. And the way that I'm doing this is that I have this highlight that only appears, and there's a visibility rule where the production trigger status, that field that I've just shown, is not empty. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the automation and you're going to see how that plays a role. But essentially, the opposite applies when it is empty. In other words, when that automation runs, you see this highlight. When the automation is not running and it's clear, you see this. The next highlight is just the total tasks. And here, all this is really showing me is this total task complete field from my order, which is total task complete, this. But I'm embellishing it. How am I printing this over here, right? You might be wondering. Very easy. All I'm doing is I'm adding some dynamic fields from my order inside of the help text. And this is just, one of the beauties of using Noloco. You can add dynamic fields into your help text. And I'm displaying that value as a progress bar. The total task is my maximum bar value, show number. I can even highlight this on conditions. In other words, if I'm more than 50% done, it could be green. If it's less than 50%, it could be yellow, or, So yeah, that's basically it in terms of the highlights. Now we have this part, which was the main thing that I was riffing on when I was creating this system, I was thinking that maybe the users would jump into an order, but then I thought that it would be stupid. But technically, maybe this is useful for an admin who wants to see all the line items for one particular order like this. And maybe they want to make them disappear and appear in another list over here, because essentially if I press this button, that task will disappear from this list and will appear in this list, in the one on the right hand side. So pending production line items, again, super straightforward, just production tasks, nothing really to call home about in terms of complexity. The filter is complete is false. In other words, that check mark against the order line item, the production task, this is not checked. So that's that. We have the complete production items, which is literally a copy of this particular view, only with the inverted filter like we see here. That's basically it. There's not much else to this view. Very simple. There's another thing. There is this button called Start Production, but we're going to talk about this button in the next video, so go ahead and watch that if you're curious to see how the automations work. Let's talk about production tasks, pending and completed. Here we have two interesting things. The number one interesting thing was, and again, this is just a simple grid view, nothing really crazy, but I needed to create a label over here for my production line item and its latest status. Now, the way that I've done it initially was to actually try and do this in here, but it created a circular reference. So if you were if you were in here and you tried to combine shipping and this name, it wouldn't allow you to do that because it does create a circular reference. But if you try to do this within Noloco, you're completely fine. I added a custom virtual field. I need to be in production. Yes. So over here, I have this field now called next in, where essentially it's a formula field where I'm concatenating the name and the department in the next stage. So using this particular approach, you're able to create that value where you have the production line item plus its next status. Hopefully that makes sense as well. If you were curious to find out how I'm pulling that off without tattooing that status, because traditionally within Airtable, in order to avoid circular references, you would have to tattoo the value and keep updating it with automations. But this is a slightly more esoteric way to do it, but at least you don't have to deal with automations and tracking that jazz. Now, let's talk a little bit about these two views as they are. I've created a very simple method of creating permissions for this. Traditionally, I would create different roles, but I would also create separate pages for each role. In this case, I only have 2 pages, pending and completed. The beauty of it is the whole permission setup. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we should go into production tasks and we have this. So this is really the only set of permissions that are thrown right now on the system. It goes something like this. Apply these permissions to users in the following roles: shipping, assembly, and milling. Production task department is one of logged in user AT department. So in other words, I'm basically saying your department should match the production tasks department. Essentially what it's saying is that the tasks that you see, because these particular views are tasks, they're not the production line items, they are the tasks themselves, essentially this table over here. And because every single one of these tasks is related to a department, all I'm saying is basically, look, as a user, you can only see the tasks that are within your department. Every user has got a department that's related to them, so it's a very easy comparison to do, and it saves you all that work. So that's how I'm able to achieve this very clean design. Now, the other thing is, of course, there are filters. So in other words, complete is false in the pending tasks, and complete is true in the completed list. But essentially, it's the same thing. There are some automations that are like in the workflows, but we're going to talk about this in the next video. So the first one deals with make. I'm going to talk about that one. And there's also one automation that technically watches a field and prints the user and the timestamp when a task was completed. It works okay. I've seen it misbehave a bit. Usually it's either super quick to work or not very quick. It works like 90% of the time. So that's it for me, guys, on the second part. If you want to continue geeking out with me on this particular project, watch the next video, which deals with the automations that run behind the scenes, that deal with the creation of production line items and the timestamping. That's it for me. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.